How many of us have written any line of code before? But you've done something like hello world. If you've written hello world before, let me see your hand. Okay. If you've not written any line of code before, let me see your hand. Okay. If you want to write a line of code and you have not written before, let me see your hand. Okay. By that, I assume that every one of us that are here, to a large extent, you understand what programming is all about. Okay. So the purpose of my talk is to tell you the things that makes up a better developer, right? So when you start working in any company of your choice, what you're going to be evaluated against when you start working has nothing to do with your ability to understand JavaScript, Python, or any language of your choice. Okay? You're going to be evaluated against what they call software engineering habits, right? In your entire career. So what I aim to do for you today is to tell you something that I hope is going to maybe change your mind on how you see lines of code, right? So if you've heard of the word, has anybody told you write a neat code? Has anybody told you that before? Write neat code. Your code should be neat. You've not heard of that. Like somebody tell you that, your code is not neat. Make it neat. You've seen that before, right? Okay. So we're going to look at what actually makes a neat code, right? So one of those things we're going to be looking at, it will be like building better apps, right? With structured logging. I understand that we are beginners, we are intermediate, and some of us could be advanced. The purpose of the talk would be that I will want you to understand why you should log in your application. Okay. So I remember when I started learning how to code, when somebody wants to review my code, you know console.log for those of us that write JavaScript. Do you know console.log? Yeah. If somebody see console.log in your code, the first thing will be like, it's dirty. Have you ever had that experience before? That say delete console.log. You've had that experience. So in the real sense, is logging bad? So it's a question I want to ask, right? Is logging bad? So now that we are all set, I want to answer one more question. Please confirm you can hear me very well. And confirm that I can speak clearly and you can understand. Is that fine? Okay, so let's continue. So today we're going to be talking about building better apps, right, with structured logging. Disclaimer, when you are doing demos, things go out of hand and some code breaks. In case it breaks, it's not that I don't know what I'm doing, it's just that my village people may be following my code. However, I will try to make it easy for you to understand. So we're going to be looking at building better apps with structured logging. Do you think logging is bad? If you think logging is bad, and I know by logging, I don't know if most of us understand what logging is all about, but we're going to see it. Do you think logging is bad? And if you know what logging is, can you just raise up your hand? It's going to be an interactive section because I want you to understand this topic. Okay, so don't worry. Logging is bad. Bad logging is. So I'm going to show you what is the difference between good logging and bad logging. So raise your hand if you've ever logged in production before. Do you know what production environment is? Okay, don't worry. We're going to figure out what production environment is all about today. Okay, do you think you're handling your logs correctly? Do you think you're handling your logs correctly? Okay, we're going to see how best we can handle our logs correctly. Okay, why do we log? Before we get to see why we log, logging is for three main reasons. The first one is for you to be able to debug and fix issues. I'm going to show you some code and show you how possible you would have been able to capture some bugs and you did not. Track user system events, audit and monitor performance. For the purpose of this talk, we're just going to be looking at the first one and the second one. The third one is a little bit advanced. You may be using some monitoring tools at that level, but for the purpose of this audience, we're going to be doing 1 and 2. So what is the problem with Mercilog? Before I talk about what is the problem with Mercilog, I want you to read this line of code. If you understand this line of code, just raise your hand. Just read it. Just read it like English. Try to understand it from plain English. If you understand what is there, raise your hand. Okay. What you see on the first, on the left-hand side from my end is showing you a function called process payment. Say, for example, you're working for an e-commerce company and somebody is about to process a payment and you see something like console log, start payment, right? And you see all of this snippet of code that is there. So let's say before you do something, before somebody processes an order, you want to check if the balance is okay, right? Before you process. So something happened in this code. This is the right-hand side. It is the log from this code. Does that log make sense to you? Can you make sense out of it? Can you possibly make sense out of it? I just saw something like starting payment, balance 3,000, total 5,250, something went wrong. What is the thing that went wrong? Do you know what went wrong? I'm not sure. Me that wrote the code, I don't know. Balance issue maybe, I don't know. Payment failed, transaction reference, payment done, end of function. This is an example of what they call bad logging. And this is what people tell you that clean your codes, right? Make it readable. So the next slide I'm going to show you is what they call structured logging. So this is the same code. However, we've done some cleanup. Notice you don't see something like console.log. Are you seeing anything like console.log anymore? Are you seeing console.log? See, first of all, we are speaking plain English, right? You read and you understand. So what I'm asking you right now is that somewhere inside this code, you don't have what they call console.log. I have a utility function called logger, right, which I'm going to explain to you when we start writing the code. The same line of code, but this is the output. So if you read this thing right now, it's showing you info, starting payment. That is the order ID. The next one is info, payment successful. Between this one and this one, which one do you understand the most, A or B? This one or this one? Which one do you understand? Okay. So by definition of my section, I assume that I've imparted you. You've been able to differentiate between messy logs, right, and structured logging. And that is what this talk is all about. How do we take our logs from this to this? That is what we're going to be talking about. Are we understanding the topic? Are you sure? This thing, you're not going to see it in any school book. So if you like study engineering, they're not going to teach you this one. This has to do with engineering practices, okay? So let's go to the next one. This is an example of a log. Can anybody understand what is here? I actually pasted the screenshot. I'm not sure I can understand. So it's okay if you don't, right? So this is an example again of unstructured logging. Outputting something in your terminal where you don't understand what it's saying. So this is another example. So what structured logging means? It means that when you're logging in your application, right, you need to use key and value format, right, using JSON. Easy to pass by tools like Seek or Kibana. So what this is saying is that, does any of us know JavaScript object or Python dictionary? You know Python dictionary and you know JavaScript object. What I'm trying to say is that your log should usually be a JavaScript object. Okay? Logging a string doesn't make you a professional, right? Logging a string doesn't make your code look like you know what you're doing. So as much as possible, your logs should be in JavaScript object notation, JSON. So one of the reasons why you do this is because if you think of your log as a query, a database entry, right, you can query it. So for those of us that don't understand what I'm saying, in JavaScript, there are object operators, right? You could read an object. You could find the first item of an object. You could get the index of the object. So think of your log. Every time you log something, think of it as you're writing something into a memory for you to access later. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, we're going a little bit deeper. I'll try not to. So what I'm saying is that if you need to log something, there's a key and there's a value. A key could be, I don't want to go deeper now, but hashed sign, right? And the value could be anything you want to put for the memory in your computer to be able to access it. So let's continue. This is an example of what logging is, okay? If you check at the top of it, it's called logging level, right? And the log level is info. There are about 5 of them, which I'm going to show you. The message for this particular log is perform Joe Walker in 1,143 milliseconds. This is the event, right? So if anything should happen in your app, and I tell you, Can you debug it? Do you think with this you'll be able to understand what is happening? Yes. Because why? The log is giving you every possible information that you need, right, to access every part of your application. Are we following? All right. So when you have a structured login like this, if you understand JavaScript a little bit more, you'll be able to access any of this property and do more advanced troubleshooting. Okay? The purpose of your log is not to show the user error. The purpose of your log is for you to be able to track bugs and maintain your system. So in all of these things that we've said, you need to know why you are logging. Okay, so if you started training yourself how to become a developer, just like as I did, one of the things we didn't know is that somewhere along my journey, I was told that I shouldn't put console.log in your code. That is dirty, right? So every time you log, you should have a reason. Okay, for the fact that I said logging is good, I don't expect you to see your entire code base, right, filled with console.log all over the places. Okay, it is very important that you understand this one. It helps avoid noise and cost. Do you know logging is expensive? Do you know logging is expensive? How is it expensive? Those of you that nodded your heads, how is it expensive? After all, it's just in my terminal, right? Okay, do you know that for every of those texts that you're seeing, if you're saving them at some point in your server, right, it adds up in spaces. That's why companies will tell you that we can troubleshoot your situation within the next 31 days. After 31 days, we don't have those records anymore. Have you encountered this kind of situation? Because they need to clean, right, their storage system to be able to accommodate logs. As a matter of fact, if you use Azure, GCP, or any of the cloud providers, right, you're going to pay for your storage when you're logging. So logging is not cheap. So for that reason, you shouldn't just be attributing everything to the terminal. As much as possible, you want to log what is most important to you. Okay, if you cannot explain why you log, please don't. It's very important. If somebody is asking you that, why is this line of code is here, and somewhere in your head you're thinking technically why that line of code is there, please don't even try logging at all. Do you understand this one? If you cannot explain, right, why you're logging, please don't log. This is the most important thing I want you to understand, and this is how to use log levels, right? You need to know this thing. I don't know how you want to do it, but you need to memorize what you're seeing right now. So these are different logging levels for different environments. This is how you control what gets sent to the terminal. So the number one of them is debug, right? In a more maybe layman way, there's one that is not yet, it's called trace. Have you ever written your line of code and JavaScript compiler or Node.js compiler is showing you an error that you cannot find something, right? That is a trace error. If you expose that log, that your trace error, to your terminal in your production application, an attacker, right, could actually read that log and attack your system. So let's say, for example, I'm attacking your system and somebody is trying to log into your application with a username and a password that is not correct, right? Then you tell the person username and password not correct, or whatever you want to say. If you tell me username is not correct, you've already streamlined my operation, right? Then I'll start figuring the username that will be fast, that will be correct. If I get the username and you tell me the password is not correct, right? I will start looking at what is the next one that I need to send you. So in order for you to avoid that particular error, we control your terminal, the logs that get attributed to your terminal, using what they call logging level. This is the most important thing you need to know. In software engineering, that's what they call environment. When you're developing, it's called what? Local host. We all know that one, right? Anything you do in your computer is called what? Local host, right? You are in your local server, okay? When you are now moving it to maybe another environment called dev, dev means that all of us that are here, I can push my code base to a central repository called dev, and all of us can access it. What it means that all of us could have the same privileges because we all work in a team, okay? So if you've ever worked in a team before and they will tell you that you don't have access to production database, have you heard that before? That you don't have access to a particular environment, that you need to talk to your team lead, right? So one of the reasons why you do that is because of what they call elevated permissions, access control. You don't want to give people access to what they are not supposed to have access to. Is that correct? So if you know this, in your dev environment, you should be using what they call debug, okay? However, it doesn't mean that you cannot have debug, info, and one error or factor in the same lines of code. You could have all of them, okay? So I'm going to show you at some point in the slide what I'm trying to say. So this is an example of different logins, right? So the first one is info, user logged in. As a matter of fact, every time something successful happens in your system or code, you should attribute what they call info log. You should attribute info anytime. If your function does a thing correctly, right? You know the way you return something from a function. The way you return something, before you return anything, you need to log it. You need to log it with what they call info level log. You know the way success is, right? 200 error, success. Anytime anything happens in your system and it's successful, please remember to always attribute info log. So for example, you've got info log 1 error. The system is telling you that the user logged in successfully and the username is John. Again, this is not showing you any specific information that is related to John. John could be anybody. Okay, please don't go and put John's email address there. Theophilus said you should log. I didn't say you should put John's email address. You need to be careful of the information that you attribute. So there's what they call PII data, that is personal identifying information. Do we understand this one? Okay. Always add context. You need to include, for every time you do a request, I'm going to show you something. You need to be able to include the username, the user ID, maybe the section information. You need to make your debugging faster. So the reason is, if you check this line of code, this could not be one user, or this could be like 10 users. Let's assume 10 of us are trying to log into a system. I'm going to see this same code 10 different times. So I need some way for me to identify whose log I'm reading. Do you understand what I'm saying? So your terminal is not dedicated to one particular user in your system. Your terminal is just going to be a bunch of logs like this that belong to different users. Okay? So in order for us to identify whose log you are reading, you need to use user ID, the request ID, or the section ID. For more security purposes, you don't need to use the user ID. You need to use the section ID. Okay, except you're in a dev environment, then you can use that. You need to write clear and useful messages. For those of us that just want to attribute anything on a terminal, you need to write clear and useful messages, right? And you need to make your log comply to local privacy. So when you're writing lines of code, you want to mask people's password. So for the fact that somebody is logging into your system, you don't want to put the person's password into your terminal. Do we understand that? You need to protect personal information from a user. So again, your logs needs to comply with local privacy like NDP and the rest of it. You need to keep your logs lean and centralized, right? You need to log what happens and what matters in your system, and you need to send all your logs to one place. So in a more robust distributed systems, right, you need to there could be a crawler or a cron job in your system that moves your log from your server and send it to your storage facilities. You need to make your logs work together. Do we know what the idea of correlation ID is? Have you heard of the word correlation ID? You've heard of it, raise your hand. Okay. I'll try to explain what that is in a very simple term. Correlation ID is do you know what a unique ID is? You know what a unique identifier is, right? So every time a request goes into your system, right, you need to attach what they call a correlation ID. In most systems, they may call it S correlation ID, right? It's usually something that happens between distributed system. So when you have multiple servers, right, you need to add S correlation ID to that. And you need to set retention time. The reason why I said set retention time, remember I told you that logging is expensive, right? So you don't want to keep your log for the next 100 years. Okay, so usually a good practice is usually 30 days, right? So you log your system. After 30 days, you need to clean your storage, your local storage, and start logging all over again. Or you could send them to a cold storage where you can access it for later purposes. So every request that you make, a good habit would be what? Add the X correlation ID or S instigation ID or whatever ID of your choice. So we've done a lot of things, right? I'm going to show you a bit of a demo. Please confirm my screen is, okay, it's visible enough, right? Can you see it? Okay, so we're going to go through the messy logs again. Now that we've done the theoretical part of the gist, so let's look into what log in an actual application is. Mind you, this is not a full-blown application. These are just snippets of code that I wrote for demo purposes. So let's look at what a messy log could be. So if you check what is happening, right? I just ran a function. This is a correct function, right? Let me see if I can stack it side by side. Okay, and B. Okay, I believe this should be much better, right? So let's say this is a sample code. Can you still see what is on the screen? Is it visible enough? Okay, so this is a code. I am trying to process payment. I showed us this code before now. This is a correct way for me to do this. Remember, I have a utility function called logger. For most applications that you're going to write, avoid writing console log in your application. Always have one source of truth for you to use in terms of your logging. For JavaScript developers, you can use the Pino library. It's a very good library that helps you do your logging. So it's a very important library. Check it. It does a lot of formatting for you. So let's say you have a line of code or you have a bunch of code. The first thing you need to do when you start your application, you need to create a utility file for logging. When you have a utility file for logging, it centralizes your log. Then you can handle everything that happens within your system. So I have a utility file, right, for my logger, which I've exported. So I have a utility line of code, which I've exported called logger, right? So you can see that at this point of the code, if I run this code, you see it's just attributing info and debug. In an elevated environment, if I want to turn off info, I don't want this info to show, I need to just come to the logger utility function and change it that I want to just see bugs from, let's say, fatter or 1. So if I run this code again, you don't see anything on the terminal, right? The reason why you don't see anything on the terminal is because we are controlling the logging with what they call logging level. Okay? So it's very important that in your production environment, you're only showing from info upward. So if I put info, if I change this to info, I'm not going to see debug log. Do you understand? So you're just only going to see info log. But if I put this to maybe trace, this is going to show me all the types of log in my system. So this is showing me info, debug, and error. Do you understand? So these basics, right, this is what forms your ability to log very well. All right? So an advanced way for you to do this would be that you want to study more about logging level. Another way you can start is you need to study about logging level. It's very, very important. Then from here, you can send these logs to anywhere. So that is the end of my demo, and my time is fast spent. Do we have questions? Sir, thank you very much. I will entertain any of your questions that you have. Do we understand what I've said so far? Is it clear enough? So if you had to summarize anything for me, what did I talk about today?
Chasing values like a key value kind of objects. That's objects in JavaScript, it's in Python. So logs should be structured. You made mention that logs should also be precise and clear. They should be concise. The logs should be descriptive, but yet it should not use too much words. You said there are 5 log levels. There's debug, there's one, there's info, there's trace, and fatal. Yeah, and the uses of each of the log levels, and I took note of that. So you mentioned the uses of each of these log levels, and I took note of that. Mentioned distributed systems that logs should be sent to a centralized place for storage, but then you can't keep logs forever. So at some point in time, you should also learn to delete logs because they are expensive, they have costs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When you started, you asked I have 10 minutes about coding. So I said, well, I just started exploring this automation.
Okay.
Which is
Okay.
I realized that I should start with this dimension.
Okay.
So I've been having issue sometimes the app and edit.
Okay.
Is I see uh, the UI sometimes I connect the API and it's not reflect. And then they show what I customize the device. But then it's not appear. But because I have this knowledge about the JSON part, so I really have a question because I don't really understand.
Oh.
The question is to be able to, because according to the class I said, you don't need much knowledge of programming.
Yeah.
So what part of or which part of JSON do I need to know so I'll be able to work with the platform and make similar platforms like maybe platform editing, batch.
So for N8N, right? I haven't used the automation, right? Because I do my own from scratch, right? One thing you should know is I don't know the underlying language, right? But JSON is a global thing, right? That you can convert to any language of your choice. So, for example, if you're using JavaScript, you can convert your JSON back to.
So I think maybe sorry, I don't want to say this.
Okay.
So I think once you understand, I have no idea about it.
Oh, you have no idea about programming. Oh, okay. That makes your case very unique to me. Oh, okay. So the first thing you need to start, you need to go to W3 school and understand what JSON is. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because I want to have knowledge about it.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of interest in this AI voice assistants.
Okay.
Whereby the clients can move codes to particular
Yeah.
you have full conversation.
Okay. Okay.
You know that where I can ask questions and the person on the ground which they are able to respond.
Okay. So I'll give you a simple advice, and also to everybody that is here. I know we all read this thing that no code or low code tools, right? And we all get excited. So whatever is happening to my brother is a result of low code tools. You're using a tool, right? But the underlying languages or principle, we don't know them. Okay, so I'm happy to assist you after this section, okay, to point in the right direction. However, if you must going to be a very low code automation engineer, right? I'm sorry, you still need to know Python. So if as simple as you understanding Python, you may not go deep into it. If you can understand a little bit of Python, I'm sure this question that you've asked, right, will be cleared. And guess what? It doesn't take up to 2 weeks to understand Python actively. Okay, so I wouldn't suggest you lean onto N8N for your automation or Zapier for anything or Airtable. You still need to know it. Do you understand? You still need to know the underlying infrastructure or languages behind them. Okay, so I'm happy to catch up with you after now. Okay, thank you very much. You are all welcome.